The CEO of Parler promises that the platform will return soon as leftists demand the deplatforming of Newsmax and One America News. In this video, we're going to take a look at the latest on Parler's triumphant return from big tech censorship, how a former Facebook executive is actually calling on cable servers to cut ties with conservative news networks, and why the radicalized extremism of cancel culture is indeed ultimately destined to fail. You are not going to want to miss this. Greetings, everyone. Dr. Steve here with you. Great to be with you as always. We believe the worldwide populist revolt has just begun, and we're here to give you conservative hope in the midst of admittedly turbulent and trying times. So if you haven't already done so, you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. We'd love to have you as a regular part of this channel, where each and every day we analyze what are often distressing current events, but always in light of very hopeful conservative trends, so we can all think better and therefore feel better. But first, let's give a huge shout out to the sponsor of this video, and that's Collagen, available at my special website, healthwithsteveturley.com. Now, if you don't know, collagen may in fact be the closest thing we're ever going to get to a real fountain of youth. Many health experts now agree that consuming collagen helps to renew and revitalize how you look and how you feel. Taking collagen regularly can revitalize your body. It can make your skin, your bones, even your hair look and feel more healthy and youthful. I use it. I put it in my coffee in the morning. I think it tastes great. You're going to love it too. And if you click on that link below today, you can get 51% off your order. So don't wait. Click on that link below and get your own collagen supply today. You'll be glad that you did. All right, gang. So let's dive right in here. It looks like the Parler social media platform, where we had 60,000 subscribers, is coming back soon. Parler CEO John Mates told Fox News that he is, quote, confident that his social media platform will be back online in the very near future, most likely by the end of the month. Mates announced that his team was able to launch a static website and recover the company's data over the weekend in a series of what he called positive developments. Parler has moved its domain to the web hosting platform Epic, which Business Insider implied was an ominous move, given that Epic has a supposed history of hosting far-right extremist content. Undeterred from these leftist hit pieces disguised as journalism, Mates did post an announcement on Parler.com. Quote, "Now seems like the right time to remind you all, both lovers and haters, why we started this platform. We believe privacy is paramount and free speech essential, especially on social media. Our aim has always been to provide a nonpartisan public square where individuals can enjoy and exercise their rights to both. We will resolve any challenge before us and plan to welcome all of you back soon. We will not let civil discourse perish." And Mates pointed out in his Fox News interview, and by the way, just to make it clear, we're no fans of Fox News here, right? We just appreciate their coverage of this story with their exclusive interview. But regardless, Mates pointed out that just being able to post a simple announcement like that was a huge breakthrough, a big milestone, as he put it. They'll be posting periodic updates on there, perhaps an update each and every day, so people can stay up to date with the status of the site's progress. Mates was also extremely grateful to his employees and staff, not one of whom has quit over the last 2 weeks. The entire Parler team is still very much intact and ready to see the return of their platform. In the meantime, I'm sure most of you know, Parler has filed a suit against Amazon Web Services for booting them off their platform in what Parler accuses was a political hit, a clear violation of antitrust law. We'll obviously be keeping our eyes on how that lawsuit pans itself out. Now, while all this is going on, you probably heard of the latest example, what seems to be the never-ending increasing extremism of cancel culture coming from a former head of Facebook security. This former Facebook chief security officer, a guy named Alex Stamos, told CNN that carriers like Verizon, AT&T, and others should cancel One American News Network and Newsmax. Quote, "One of the places you could see this on the fact that you now have competitors to Fox News on their right, One American News and Newsmax, which are all carried by the major cable networks. We're trying now to outflank Fox on the right, because the moment Fox News introduce any kind of realism into their reporting, immediately a bunch of people chose to put themselves into a sealed ecosystem. They can do that both on cable, they can do it online, and that becomes a huge challenge in figuring out how do you bring people back into the mainstream of fact-based reporting and try to get us back into the same consensual reality. And he was very upset by what he called extremely radical influencers on YouTube who have a larger audience than daytime CNN. And so he concluded by saying, quote, "It is up to the Facebooks and the YouTubes in particular to think about whether or not they want to be effectively cable networks for disinformation. And then we have to figure out the One American News and Newsmax problem that these companies have freedom of speech, but I'm not sure we need Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and others to be bringing them into tens of millions of homes." Now, the good news is that he made those comments on Brian Stelter's CNN program, so we can be confident that nobody watched it. But he made a couple of comments there that I think warrant some reflection here. First, he mentioned that there are some YouTubers, radical YouTubers, who are getting more views than CNN's daytime audience. Yes, that is very true, and we've pointed that out for years now. YouTubers with $100 webcams are getting a bigger audience than CNN. But that's not because they're extremists and radicals. This is where, the alternate cognitive universe of CNN and Silicon Valley just seems to break down. It's not because they're more radical and extremist. Actually, it really has little to do with ideology and virtually everything to do with the rise of what's called the network society. And we've talked about this on a number of videos. Scholars recognize that we are moving away from what's called mass society, which is very location specific. It's a society built around huge cities and industrial centers. We're moving from that to a network society where populations relate to each other much more through networks like the internet rather than through spatial proximity. And while big media is the product of mass society, right? So NBC in Rockefeller Plaza and CNN building in Atlanta, every network, for example, has their New York bureau and their Wall Street and their DC bureau for Capitol Hill. While big media is the product of mass society, the success of smaller news organizations and independent content creators are the product of this emerging network society that's rendering much of mass society and big media irrelevant. For example, virtually 100% of the initial video documentation of any significant event out there is not coming from news cameras. They're not coming from satellite trucks. Where are they coming from? Where is virtually 100% of the initial video documentation of any significant event coming from? Right? You guessed it. It's coming from cell phones. It's coming from eyewitnesses who were present at that event, recording it on their phones for the whole world to see via the network society. It's a new social order that's decentralized and disestablished that the old big media simply can't compete with anymore. There's really nothing they can do about it except stamp out of as much of it as they can. But the network society is no longer a brush fire. It's blazing all over the world. So there's really nothing big media can ultimately do about it. So that's the first point here. This former Facebook executive is just simply wrong that people are turning away from big media to smaller outlets like Newsmax and One America and YouTube content creators simply because they peddle an ideological extremism. But there's another point he brought up that I want to address because I think it's even a more significant issue. But first, in response to this latest big tech purge that we're seeing of late, we here at Turley Talks are currently setting up a number of different alt-tech sites so that we can never lose touch with each other no matter what happens. And we would love to share with you all the different sites that we're on. And you can find out by simply clicking on the link below and signing up for our alternative media directory. This directory is going to make sure that you find precisely the alt-tech site that's right for you. And best of all, we're going to all learn how to think better and feel better, but without the threat of censorship. It's absolutely free, so make sure to click on that link below, sign up for our Turley Talks alternative media directory today. All right, so this former Facebook executive made that rather interesting comment. The key question, all this cancel culture is, how do we get these people so attracted to right-wing extremists? How do we get them back into what he called the mainstream of fact-based reporting and get us back onto the same consensual reality? Now, besides the obvious absurdity that the supposed mainstream fact-based reporting involved the reporting of an outright hoax, the Russian collusion hoax, as factual for over 3 years, but besides that obvious absurdity, I think his comments point to a larger issue of what's known as the politicization of knowledge, okay? The idea of mainstream fact-based reporting actually overlooks a phenomenon documented by researchers, which has been labeled the politicization of knowledge. And what researchers have found, particularly in the scientific community, is that there is widespread acceptance among members of the scientific community that anything that contradicts politically correct doctrine is to be avoided at all costs. It's not even to be touched, even if the evidence seems to be moving in that direction. And so we're living in a time where quite literally the guardians of knowledge, right, in this case the scientific community, or by extension the fact-based mainstream media, scholars widely agree that there are some things you and I are simply not allowed to know as far as they're concerned. There's some things that you and I are not allowed to believe because it offends politically correct sensibilities. Just think of the kind of trouble Jordan Peterson found himself in because he was so willing to cite scientific study after scientific study that contradicted politically correct orthodoxy. I mean, it's the same thing with economists like Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, God rest his soul. They were all accused of all kinds of things because their economic and sociological research contradicted politically correct norms. So that's bad enough. When you start talking about contrasting radical ideology to evidence-based reporting that is itself demonstrably guilty of subsuming itself to a radical ideology of political correctness, okay? That's bad enough. But then you exacerbate the situation by adding cancel culture into the mix in the name of bringing us all back to the same consensual reality, right? That's how this former Facebook exec put it. This notion of canceling channels and news outlets in the name of bringing us to the same consensual reality represents what scholars call radicalized perspectivalism. It's a fancy schmancy word to represent the notion that a singular group of people have a monopoly on the truth. And what we're seeing coming out of CNN and the mainstream media as a whole, and increasingly big tech, is this notion that their highly leftist, globalist, Western liberal conception of the world represents reality in its absolute sense. And if you diverge from that, you're a legitimate object for censorship. But the fundamental problem here, of course, is that this radicalized perspectivalism negates the fundamental principle of a democratic society, which is what's called the communication model of governance. Very, very simple concept. The communication model of government simply states, you and I may have radically different perspectives on things. We may come from different religious traditions. We may be different ethnicities, genders, and the like, but we can still come to a common consensus about what's wrong with society and how to resolve it. That's what's known as the communication model of governance. And it's the foundation of any successful democratic society. And what we're seeing with the rise of cancel culture and its radicalized perspectivalism is nothing less than the very real breakdown of a democratic society. The good news is that because of the rise of the network society, I really don't think this cancel culture epidemic is ultimately going to succeed. But unfortunately, at least at this point, that's not stopping the increasing radicalization of the cancel culture extremists. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel. You definitely want to check out my latest video. I just uploaded it on how President Trump has indeed declassified a purported foot-high stack of Russiagate documents, all as recall efforts to oust Governor Newsom in California have gained over 1 million signatures. You are not going to want to miss that. So make sure to click on the link, and I'll see you over there. God bless.